Next question comes from Dave. You are now unmuted.
Okay. Yes, good morning, Attorney General Bonta. This is Dave Mason with the Center Square. We all of us certainly appreciate your time. I'd like to ask you today about the ban on masks on federal officers, including ICE officers, that took effect in January. The Los Angeles police chief has said he will not enforce it because he doesn't feel it's doable to have one law enforcement agency enforces another one. I know this has gone through the courts. So my question is, where is this in the courts? And is this ban enforceable? Is it going to be enforceable strictly by state DOJ, or will local law enforcement help with this?
Let me answer the second question first about who's going to enforce a mask ban. Should there be a mask ban in place in California? The answer is all law enforcement agencies would be involved in that potentially. They would have the authority. And like any law, would use their judgment based on what they see. And with respect to any violation of the law and enforce as appropriate. I expect, should this become the law of the state of California, like any law, it be treated the same, that it be enforced as appropriate. Laws are there to be followed, laws are there to be enforced if they're not followed. So that's the answer to your second question. To the first question, it is not currently the law of the state of California. A preliminary injunction was granted by a judge earlier this week based on a federal challenge that the federal government brought on the masking component. There were two laws before the court, both sorry to get technical on this, but both were being challenged by the federal government through what we call a preliminary injunction motion, an attempt at an early stage in the case to block the implementation of the law. And the court found that as to the masking law, the preliminary injunction was granted, and the court laid out a whole set of rationale and basically cleared a pathway for there to be, in my opinion, my read of the court case, a pathway for there to be an actual enforceable anti-masking law that applies to federal agents, but the current law didn't follow that pathway. There was a second part I just want to note that was the preliminary injunction was denied and is the law of the state of California. It's the identification law that requires federal agents to have some sort of notice of who they are, their name, a badge number, their agency or department. That was completely upheld. That is the law of the state of California today. Based on this preliminary injunction, I do want to flag that a preliminary injunction, as I mentioned, is an early action in a case. The case continues. There could be a summary judgment, there could be a trial where additional decisions are made by the court that determine what laws are in place or not in place. But for now, because the preliminary injunction was granted as to the masking law, the masking law is not currently in place in California. Should there be a law in the future that requires anti-masking of federal agents and is upheld by a court, I would expect law enforcement agencies to treat it like any other law. And I would expect federal agents to follow it. And I would expect law enforcement agencies, including mine, to participate just like with any other law in appropriate enforcement.
And a follow-up question. Since the tragic fatal shootings in Minnesota, have you noticed any more restraint on the part of ICE officers in California, or have there still been a lot of incidents?
Well, the killings, maybe murders, but depending on what the investigations show, of Renee Good and Alex Pretty, um, were disgusting, sickening, tragic, and never should have happened. They should both be alive today. So I'll say that. The ICE agents involved in Minnesota in Metro Surge that led to those killings, they were reckless. They appeared untrained. They escalated instead of de-escalated. They were unnecessarily violent, and it led to the killing of two United States citizens. Again, that never should have happened. There was talk And I believe there was acting behind that talk to following those unnecessary, tragic, disgusting, and sickening killings to scale back and scale down and de-escalate in Minnesota. Some of the major problems of ICE in America at this time continue. They're masked, they're armed, they use unnecessary force, they are traumatizing and terrorizing our communities, they are racially profiling our communities. They are using warrants that are issued by their own agency, not an independent judge, and they think that's appropriate. So there is a lot of the things where they're roving, and they don't have a good consistent use of body cameras. And there's a lot of these reforms are on the table now in Congress, and I think that congressional Democrats should hold firm and hold strong and ensure that there's accountability and reform and change in ICE as currently constituted and the way it's practicing. It's hurting our communities. It is hurting and undermining public safety. People are dying, and it needs to change. So let me just say that. In California, a lot of these practices that I've just described have carried over into California. Thankfully, at least now, up to now, not at the same scale and level of severity that we saw in Minnesota, but we don't think that that might not happen. We think it might very well happen. And so we're prepared. And thus our portal that I talked about earlier in response to another question. Californians, tell us what you see. Tell us what you're experiencing. Tell us what you're witnessing. We want to know. We want to get engaged if appropriate, if there is misconduct and illegality, unlawful actions. So, thankfully at this time we've been spared the level of severity of the harm visited by ICE that Minnesota experienced and should never have had to. But we think it could easily escalate here in California. California has always been a target of Trump. It will continue to be. It's for pure, outrageously political reasons, because we're the biggest blue state that has never voted for him. That's it. That's how he thinks. And for that reason, he put National Guard on the ground in Los Angeles. He's threatened California multiple times. That's why we've had to sue him 57 times and protect $188 billion of funding and get the National Guard that was improperly federalized out of our streets, and many other actions that we've taken. But the patterns and practices of ICE that are so unacceptable, we have seen them in California. They continue to be unacceptable. We'll continue to be vigilant in our response.